This podcast is produced by the Fireside Chat Club of Canada.
Hello, and welcome to Canada as I See It. Hello, and welcome to this week's podcast. I'd like to thank Andy for introducing today's show. Andy is a friend of my brother-in-law, Steve, whom you heard introduce the show a few weeks ago. Andy is currently fighting a battle with ALS, that's amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. He's looking to raise money for ALS Canada to help with research and bring awareness to this disease. How is he doing this? Well, he's embarked on what is called the ALS Virtual Mobility Challenge, where he's pedaling on a stationary bike at home, noting the distance he's covered, and marking it on a map to show how far, virtually, he has made it across the country, starting in Victoria, BC, and ending up in St. John's, Newfoundland. You can follow along and help him by going to myalschallenge.com. You can find a link on my Instagram and Facebook posts, and I'll also be putting it on my own website, warpole.ca, that's WHORPOLE.ca, and it'll also be on the Podbean website, my own one. That's firesidechatd.podbean.com. Or I could have just made it easier and said, go to podbean.com and look for Canada as I See It. Today is July 14, and it was on this day in 1912 that the Canadian educator and literary critic Northrop Frye was born in Sherbrooke, Quebec. You may or may not know who this is, but I will bet 100,000 pennies, which in fact were withdrawn from circulation in Canada in 2013, that if you saw a picture of this person, you'd say, hey, I know this guy. Mr. Frye was educated at the University of Toronto, where he studied philosophy and then theology, and he was subsequently ordained as a minister in the United Church of Canada. I recently had the opportunity to digitize some video tapes of him conducting some seminars at Victoria College here in Toronto. He passed away in Toronto on January 23rd, 1991. Now, those of you who saw my reel last week on Instagram and Facebook will already know what today's subject is. McIntosh apples, Canada's national apple. I wrote about this originally in my Canada on a Shirt series on August 11th, 2020. Although not invented by a Canadian, a tree growing this fruit was discovered on a farm in Dundela, Upper Canada, now known as South Dundas, Ontario. Interesting side note here, Andy, who introduced the show this week, his surname is Dundas. So you can see why I chose Andy to introduce the show today. Anyhow, so South Dundas, Ontario, and this was back in 1811. And go ahead, guess who discovered them? John McIntosh. See? You could say that he was Canada's own Johnny Appleseed. There's a plaque and a historic site that can be found near the location of the original tree that he discovered, which unfortunately died in 1910. And it's in South Dundas, as I said. And this is 70 kilometers south of Ottawa at exit 750 on Highway 401. Now, the McIntosh is more or less the go-to apple for many a Canadian recipe or snack. Having said that, it's quite a fragile fruit. It's easily susceptible to disease and damage. It is the parent of many other apples that you see around today, over 200 years later. And those include the Spartan, the Cortland, and the Empire. I picked up a bag of McIntosh apples this week, and I really marveled at how small they were. Well, until I realized it's probably because my hands have grown as I've aged. But I think that as other varieties have been developed, growers have endeavored to give you more bang for your buck, so to speak. Another note, the McIntosh computer, although not spelt the same way. The fruit is a MC, and the computer is a, Mac, M-A-C. And it was actually named after the fruit. So anytime you refer to your MacBook or your Mac Air laptop, you are in fact invoking Canadian history. So there you go. A lot of little tidbits crumbled over this Apple-based podcast. I hope you enjoyed your trivia dessert. If you'd like to take part in this podcast buffet, please send me a recording of you saying, "This podcast is produced by the Fireside Chat Club of Canada," and email it to me at asiseeit@warpole.ca, just like Andy did. Now, I've got a big podcast coming up, as per a request, so keep your ears peeled. See what I did there? It's an apple thing, a joke because you peel apples. Okay. Thank you so much for listening and indulging me this week, everyone. I will talk to you again next week. And that's a part of Canada as I see it. It is written and produced by me, James Warpole, and brought to life by the Fireside Chat Club of Canada. Our theme song is Night Owls by Braden Deal. If you have any questions or comments, please email me at asiseeit@warpole.ca. Join us every Sunday for another episode of Canada as I See It.